Magnus Brunner today, the European Commissioner for Migration, calls the Citywest IPAS Centre in Dublin, of course, the 148 million euro property, is a good example for the rest of Europe, okay? The Citywest Hotel is an amazing example of how you can bring in human traffic EU, UN migrants into Ireland. And they want to replicate this all around Europe right now. But of course, we know as Irish citizens and actually living in this country that the Citywest Hotel is an absolute disaster. The Irish government has brought over 2,000 to 3,000 military-aged men, one of which sexually assaulted brutally a little 10-year-old Irish girl a few weeks ago in the entrance of the actual centre. Nobody stopped it. Okay, of course, the Gardaí intervened. He was posing as a security guard. He was illegally in the country for 6 years and had a deportation order that wasn't actually followed through with. So the Gardaí didn't do their job properly and deport this guy. He had a deportation order for 8 months. If he was actually deported 8 months ago, this little innocent 10-year-old girl never would have got sexually assaulted. But now we have a 26-year-old migrant psychopath that should be in jail forever, or locked up, or hung. So this whole article head to toe by the journal, the bullshit mainstream media, is complete nonsense. The whole thing head to toe. It says Ireland is a frontrunner in terms of our preparation to adopt the EU Migration Asylum Pact, and that Citywest International Protection Centre is an example of best practice. Like, it breeds sexual predators. It breeds criminals. It is actually the worst practice for migration and asylum into Europe. This is like an example of what you don't want to do. The Citywest for me would be an example of what you don't want to do, okay? Anything they're doing in Citywest, do the opposite. To have 2,000 to 3,000 military-aged men from God knows where, war-torn countries with no background checks, they could be ISIS, they could be Al-Qaeda, that is absolute flipping death. That's a death sentence to the public. That is a death sentence to the Irish public. And they want to replicate this all around Europe. They're flipping absolutely insane, guys. The EU have lost their mind. We need to leave the EU immediately in Ireland. Immediately. That will be the first order of business. It said here, Brunner made these remarks during a press conference in the government buildings in Dublin this afternoon following meetings with Justice Minister Jim O'Callaghan. Of course, Brunner, again, same as all these big ministers and whatever TDs, they're just doing it for the money. They don't give a bollocks about the population of Ireland. They don't give a shit about the replacement of the people. They only care about the paycheck, guys. That's it. The pair met to discuss migration issues ahead of the implementation of the EU Migration Pact next June and to discuss plans for Ireland's presidency of the EU next year. While here, Brunner also received briefings with senior Gardaí and the head of the Criminal Assets Bureau and paid a visit to Citywest. So this guy was allowed into Citywest, okay? But the citizens and the public aren't. So the public have no say with IPAS centres. Living in Ireland, guys, when we first moved here, back when I was 6 years old, my dad being Irish, moving back to his home county of Galway, we actually got planning permission rejected by one of our neighbours, our piece of shit neighbours, who were British, and they actually left us then. They actually left the area about 6 months later because they hated us. But that's the ridiculousness. Now, when these illegal migrants come from God knows where, Syria, Albania, Eastern Europe as well sometimes, criminal people coming from Tunisia and whatever, all these, war-torn countries, Liberia, when they come over from these countries with no background checks, they're put into this hotel and the public have no say in it. We can decide on who gets to stay next to us as Irish people, but we don't get to say who gets to stay next to us when it comes to the government and them planting people in the country. How ridiculous is that? It said the Irish government purchased Citywest earlier this year for use as accommodation and a reception centre for people seeking asylum in the state. Speaking to reporters at today's press conference, the commissioner said that he saw on his visit to Citywest how well prepared Ireland is to implement the EU Migration Pact. If I was in office, if I was a leader, I would slap down this EU Migration Pact. I would absolutely not allow it into the country. It's destroying the country. The US officials, according to Donald Trump and the State Department of the United States, has said explicitly mass migration into countries in Europe has to be looked into because it's destroying Western society. You know how bad that is when America is literally saying that it's destroying Western society? I mean, that means that your country is absolutely finished, guys. Finished. This Brunner guy is a scumbag piece of shit. He said, I really want to congratulate you there. It's the sort of best practice I think we see here. And I'm very happy to share with that my colleagues in the rest of the European Union. So they want to replicate the sexual predators that are being breeded, that are actually, it's a breeding ground for this sexual predation, the murderers, serial killers. It's actually a breeding ground for these people. They want to replicate that around Europe. You know, do you know how stupid this guy sounds? There was literally riots outside the Citywest Hotel because of how bad they're handling immigration in this country. This guy, Brunner, is a retard.
With Ireland holding the rotating EU presidency in the second half of next year, Commissioner Magnus Brunner was partly visiting to discuss Irish priorities and preparation. But just a few weeks before taking the presidency, Ireland has other projects to tackle, including coming into line with the EU's new collective rules around managing asylum cases. The Migration and Asylum Pact, effective from next June, requires a 12-week turnaround for applications from so-called safe countries. That's a timeline Ireland has struggled to meet. October was the first time all year that claims have been addressed any quicker. But the Pact says this timeline should also include any appeals procedure too. And that's where Ireland faces real challenges. 17,000 appeals are currently pending. Nonetheless, the European assessment is broadly positive, particularly after the Commissioner was given a guided tour of what is now an accommodation centre in Citywest.
The whole system, as we saw, and the way it is organised was just very professional.
Oh yeah, it was professional, all right. Recently, legit guys, only like a month ago, a 10-year-old Irish girl was sexually assaulted brutally by a 26-year-old man who had a deportation order that was still living in Citywest. So they're not checking people coming in and out of Citywest Hotel. And also there are reports of a man being murdered there. And it's all being covered up. It's all being swept underneath the rug. These are the best practices, okay? This is the best practice of migration into Europe. They're destroying the whole country. The EU is a tyrannical NGO government body. It's just ridiculous, guys. They're destroying the whole infrastructure of the country and the flipping EU.
And very human as well. So it's a very good mixture, I would say. And I think as I said, it's a very good example for the rest of Europe.
Another factor that could influence Ireland's system to meet those timelines is any spillover effect from changes in Britain. There, the government says it will now only grant asylum for 2.5 years at a time, possibly meaning some claimants coming here as an alternative.
I'm conscious no law has been changed yet in the UK, although there has been announcements. But if the announcements lead to changes in migratory flows, well, that's something I'm going to have to consider and discuss with my government colleagues.
Ministers will consider further changes to asylum law on Wednesday, including restricting family reunifications for successful refugees, unless they can provide their own accommodation.
The Irish government and its handling of migration and immigration into the country has been a head-to-toe disaster. They have completely destroyed the country, guys. Mass illegal immigration into this country is destroying the fabric of society. The economy, the flipping amount of houses that we have, the crime has gone through the roof. Every single day I'm reporting on some crazy crime. Yesterday, some guy from Zimbabwe bought a flipping car illegally, no insurance, no tax, no driver's license, no NCT. He flipping drove, he smashed into an ESB pole, 60,000 euros worth of damage. He nearly flipping killed the woman beside him, broke her rib that was in the car with him. He flipping didn't get any suspended sentence, didn't go to jail, didn't go to prison for it. Just a complete slap on the wrist. So like, we're not even criminalizing these IPAS residents. They just get a free run. They get to do a Grand Theft Auto rampage around Dublin City and nothing happens. You know, men from Zimbabwe, Liberia, Syria, Libya, like all these war-torn countries with ISIS literally swarming the streets of these places. It's like it's a Grand Theft Auto. We have Grand Theft Auto in Ireland before we got Grand Theft Auto 6. Like, look at this. We have Jim O'Callaghan talking complete nonsense last night on RT, trying to make us seem like migration is a good thing. They're constantly trying to push this narrative when we know it's completely destructive to the entire country, the EU, and the whole Western society. The US State Department literally said it a couple days ago.
In respect of family reunification, I certainly would like to see the process speeded up. But also, I suppose, we've got to balance the interests of the people you were talking about, the healthcare workers who are outside Leinster House, but also, I suppose, the interests of the Irish citizens as well, who have a situation whereby we've a limit in terms of the number of people who could come in under family reunification. As we know, our population is increasing approximately 7 times the EU average, so our population is increasing very significantly.
Couple of things there. He's saying we have to speed up the time of family reunification. How about this? Crazy idea? Deport everybody. How about that? No family, bringing families back together. Deport. Also, he said the Irish population is growing at 7 times the EU average. Well, That's criminal. That's literally, we're in a shit show, guys. Like, we are actually in the last days of Rome in Ireland. Like, we are in the last days of Rome because 7 times the national average. Like, when you let too many people into your country, it destroys the culture. It destroys what you are as a people. It's a disaster. Trust me, dark days are coming. If you think Ireland is bad now with no jobs, huge unemployment, no housing, just wait. You haven't seen anything yet. Like the song, you ain't seen nothing yet. You haven't seen anything yet, guys. It's going to get 100 times worse.
We just need to balance our immigration with ensuring that we treat people very fairly, but at the same time we try to keep some level of control on our population.
Is looking at student visas for people who come here to perhaps study English from Brazil and other countries like that. About 60,000 of those visas are issued a year. Are you looking at changing
an issue. That's an issue I'm looking at. I've had a discussion with my cabinet colleague James Lawless, who's the Minister for Higher Education, in respect to that. And I suppose if you compare the numbers on that, which, as you say, it's 60,000 a year coming, with the numbers in respect of international protection, those seeking asylum, which at present it's up to around 11,600 this year. So there's a large number of people coming in. Which is a reduction,
isn't it?
Oh, it's a reduction from 18,500 last year. So I suppose there are many things I can control and government can control, in particular in terms of the granting of visas. I suppose
when we talk about visas as well, guys, 60,000 to 40,000 per year. So 60,000 student visas and 40,000 work visas are issued. How many of those people are just staying here because going back home would mean terrible, things for them, and they have much better economic reasons to stay here? Probably half of them. Like, let's be honest, guys. They say, oh, we brought in 40,000, the most ever. We're letting in hundreds of thousands of people. The number is not what you think it is. If we let in a few thousand people that are educated, that speak English, that want to work hard here, help the people, we're not doing that, guys. We're just flooding the country with God knows who, from God knows where, don't give a shit about Ireland. Nah, this is a disaster. They don't even speak English. These people aren't going to get hired. This is a disaster. The country, needs a complete overhaul quickly.
What makes asylum different is we don't necessarily have control over it because the numbers can fluctuate. But you're absolutely correct.
Wait, hold on a second. I paused it too soon there. We don't have... Wait, hold on. Oh, I think I'm going to get a flippin' seizure or a migraine or a flippin'... I'm going to get a flippin' heart attack when I hear this shit. What did he just say there? What did he just say? He said we can't control the number of asylum seekers coming in because it fluctuates every year. What if there was 10 million Chinese people coming tomorrow? What if there was 30 million Somalians coming tomorrow? Okay, all of a sudden the population of just big foreheads triples. What would happen then? Like, this is outrageous. This is just crazy stuff. We're not even a country anymore. Like, Ireland really is barely a country anymore. The only countries left is like the USA, like Germany. Germany is about to fall though. There's very few countries actually that run properly left. I mean, Italy's a disaster. Everywhere in flipping Latin America and Africa is a flipping disaster. You have some places in Africa that probably run better than Ireland, like South Africa. Maybe some places like that run better. The Middle East is running better. The Asia is where to go now, like Japan and these countries. They don't allow bullshit like this.
Can control and government can control, in particular in terms of the granting of visas. I suppose what makes asylum different is we don't necessarily have control over it because the numbers can fluctuate. But you're absolutely correct. If we want to try to, I suppose, assert control and limits on our population, certainly in terms of issuing visas, that's something that we can fully control ourselves.
What about the UK's stricter migration rules? We can't control those, and I know Sinn Féin has asked for you to have some kind of a bilateral agreement so that if somebody should be claiming asylum in the UK, they can be returned to Britain.
Yeah, but Matt also needs to recognise, Matt Carty, the Sinn Féin spokesperson, he also needs to recognise that if the UK is going to enter into a bilateral agreement with us, it's going to be like the bilateral agreement they have with France, which is described as one in, one out. And although I'm very concerned about the numbers of people coming in to claim asylum in Ireland, travelling south over the border from Belfast, my counterpart, Home Secretary Mahmood, is concerned about the number of people coming into Dublin, travelling up north and getting into Britain that way. So it's a two-way process, and I think we just need to be careful that we're not going to have an agreement with the UK which involves us just giving back to them people who've come in here from Britain.
See? We're cooked. He said it himself right there. This is him saying it. We cannot handle the numbers. If they come over to Ireland from the EU, from the UK, we're just going to have to accept them. Man, dark days ahead of this country.
To be a two-way process. And I think what's much more effective is that I continue the very good cooperation and collaboration I have with the Home Secretary.
Hell no.
And I'm conscious as well that previously Britain announced changes in respect to their asylum laws, and there wasn't really much substantive change introduced. So I'm going to keep a close eye in terms of what happens after the statement, see if the laws changed. And if it does affect migratory flows, I'll certainly be going back to my colleagues in government with proposals.
The EU Commissioner on Migration was in Dublin
Disaster.
today. You visited Citywest with him, and he said what he saw there was best practice. And it's interesting, there was an article in the Irish Independent today. There was a woman from Rwanda who had survived the genocide. Both of her parents were killed, and she said being in an IPAS centre in Ireland feels like being in prison without a release date. How long do you think people should spend in an IPAS centre?
Well, I would say it's pretty ungrateful by the woman who got both of her parents killed in Rwanda. I would tell her, well, if Ireland is so bad and it's like living in a prison here in Ireland in your IPAS centre, how about you go back to Rwanda where there's a genocide and they'll cut your arms off? Okay, they'll cut your damn head off. How about you go back to Rwanda then, I would say. Okay, if Ireland is so bad. Okay, because we don't have practices like they do over there. You know, this sort of insulting of Ireland, you know, this is like where it pisses me off. It's like, oh, Ireland is so shit because it's like living in a prison. Bollocks. You know what I mean? You can leave that IPAS centre anytime you want. You can walk around the cities and, you know, you can do what you want. You can buy what you want. Okay? Or go back home to Rwanda. That's just your choice. You're living here. You should be privileged to be even stepping foot on Ireland, my land. Okay?
Feels like being in prison without a release date.
Bollocks.
How long do you think people should spend in an IPAS centre?
Well, I read that article as well, and when you read down through it, the answer was given that the woman had in fact been granted international protection in Ireland. So, like, she shouldn't be in an IPAS centre, and obviously part of the policy I'm introducing is to try to move people on, because you're entitled to accommodation when you're applying for asylum. Once you're granted asylum, you've got to be treated the same way as everyone else. But what's certainly the case is I want to speed up the process for asylum. It's taken too long for too many years. And under the new laws I'll be introducing later this year, and they'll become effective in June next year, I'm going to try to insist that we have applications dealt with within 3 months. And that's going to be in...
So once again, he's lying to the public at the end there. He's going to bring applications in 3 months. Yeah, sure, guys. Like, that's never going to happen. 3 months for an application? It takes him 6 years. The guy in Citywest that sexually assaulted that girl, he was here for 6 years. Okay? He had a deportation order for 8 months. Now he's saying that he's going to bring the IPAS time to 3 months. So your man was here for 6 years, 8 months deportation. So they couldn't even deport the guy within 3 months. So they're going to say now that they're going to get the guy a deportation order within 3 months? Yeah, sure. That's never going to happen. That is complete bollocks, lads. I'm going to have an aneurysm someday watching all these bullshit news stories. The next one we have here is a BBC poll. The British Broadcasting Centre, of course, the brainwashing broadcast centre, a company, reveals that 95% of people think that multiculturalism does not work. We all know that this sort of mass illegal immigration into the country, this, you know, melting shit pot they like to call it, does not work. You know, you have to integrate into the society that you live in. Okay, multiculturalism, where you're trying to bring your culture from another country to Ireland, is bollocks. Okay, when you come to Ireland, you adhere about our culture, okay, because you're here in this country. They're correct. 95% of people have common sense, apparently.
Shall meet, unfortunately, on this one. We do have to bring you our vote, because you have been voting in the text and online vote today. So here is the result. Is multiculturalism working? Here is what you told us.
Oh, shit.
5% of those of you who voted said yes, it is.
Damn, that's crazy.
95% of those of you who voted this morning said
that's hilarious.
No, it isn't.
Dude, that's hilarious. They had to, like, cut it off. They're like, oh. All of them just went silent. You know, 5 white people, British white people, sitting on the couch like, and they're all obviously left-wing. Like, this is the thing, guys. You know, the mainstream media now is starting to get it. You know, they're starting to get it. People like myself are pushing back every single day. This has to keep happening, guys. We have to keep highlighting the nonsense that's happening in society. We have to keep this fight up, or else the countries are lost completely. I love you all. If you want to support me, hit the join link underneath the video. Become a member today. Help me buy a bigger suit, because this suit is getting a bit small, I'm going to say. For just €3 per month, can help support me push back against the mainstream media and the woke Irish government every single day. And I'll see you guys in the next one, man. Peace.